Empathy. I'm sure all of you have heard about empathy in one form or another. After all, it is a widely suggested antidote to school shootings, wars, racism, and the list goes on and on. But have you ever paused for a second and wondered, what exactly is empathy? And why is everyone so concerned about it? Well, according to a researcher, Sandra Galdia, empathy is our ability to dream our way to the heart and mind of another and consider how we might feel in that person's situation. Empathy is when you see your best friend breaking up and you recall the devastating pain of heartbreak. Empathy is when you hear about a terrorist attack and tears start flowing out of your eyes because you connect to the pain of the victims on such a level. However, having empathy for everyone may seem like a lot of work. You may even be criticized for showing empathy towards people that are outside your social group. But believe it or not, the moment you genuinely help someone who's reaching out for help is the moment they are much more likely to help you out when you need help. Connections matter. Emotions matter. Humanity matters. Peace can never be achieved without these three. Since the dawn of time, people have used empathy as a universal language in order to connect, heal, and help other people. Without empathy, there wouldn't be a communication interface and thus no incentive for people to share beneficial information. We'd be surrounded by wars, spite, and jealousy, encapsulated in a world that only really cares about itself. So yes, empathy does breed empathy. So without further ado, let's take a deep dive into what empathy is all about. So empathy has always been an essential part of what being human means. It started developing in us in order to extend our chances of survival by relying on other people for help. A neurological explanation for the existence of empathy is mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are activated in our brains when we are around people we trust and feel connected to. Mirror neurons are the reasons we tend to mimic small expressions and behaviors around people that we are surrounded by. So the fact that mirror neurons and empathy are essentially ingrained into our brains means that everyone essentially relies on empathy in one form or another in order to survive. There's actually an interesting study conducted by the University of Michigan that said we are about 40% less empathetic than we used to be around 30 years ago. An obvious question that arises from this is, why? Why now? Aren't we more connected than ever before since we know more about the world than ever before? Psychologists analyzing the depletion of empathy over the last 30 years suggested that there could be a number of reasons for the depletion of empathy. However, one theme that remained constant throughout all of their explanations was the overwhelming use and influence of media and technology. For instance, they argued that online communication has created a free space where anyone can vent anonymously with little fear of repercussion. Without seeing the other person's direct emotional response, many people feel emboldened to speak hatefully, thus creating a cycle of fear, mistrust, and prejudice. Additionally, the researchers advocated that easy access to huge amounts of information could also be directly responsible for emotionally draining us, which leads us to negate our emotions, which ultimately ends up destroying empathy. In other words, we are bombarded with so many important stories and events that none of them feel as important anymore. It's becoming harder and harder to identify with one issue, because the more issues we know about, the more complex the world starts to become. On top of that, mainstream news outlets paint a very gloomy image of the world, overshadowing all the good that is being done with all the egregious images. As one starts to know more and more about current affairs, the inherent biases and narratives that each side is trying to sell become more and more obvious. So it's no shock that people easily feel overwhelmed. This creates an environment where people reduce horrendous events into mere statistics. They think there's simply too much going on for a single person to make a difference. Due to more people following this kind of mentality, less change is actually being made. Finally, another huge cause of apathy today is the ease in which the internet allows differences between people to shine more clearly than ever before. This causes our subconscious to conveniently outgroup anyone that is just a little different from us. This heightened polarization actively prevents empathy and thus prevents solutions from being created. Solutions come when you realize there are no sides. There is no us versus them, no situation that is completely black and white, no situation that is completely right and wrong. One must understand that social media exaggerates these differences, poisoning most discussions and leaving us to a standstill where any real change is never achieved in any reasonable amount of time. I am a huge technology person. I genuinely love technology for the power it gives me to do anything I want. In fact, my fascination with technology has led me to pursue my degree in computer engineering. So yes, the fact that when I first read this study, it shocked me that I was going to be working in an industry that is actively destroying empathy. It seemed weirdly hypocritical. But no, I was wrong. Technology is not to blame here. We are. Technology at its core was designed to help people, not to be used as a weapon in order to dictate us. Therefore, I have devised a strategy to replace the P and the C of personal computing with perspective and contact in order to help regain control back from technology. The first step in order to manifest a culture that cultivates empathy is to make sure that all perspectives are well represented. And what better way to do this than by movies and TV shows? Unconvinced? Okay, let me give you an example. So I'm sitting in my 10th grade history class, and our history teacher has just finished our unit on African American slavery. Though the unit had finished and I knew all the facts, I still felt quite an emotional disconnection between me and African American slaves, as I believed we didn't really share much in common. However, our history teacher decided to end the unit by playing a movie called 12 Years a Slave, where I was extremely saddened by what happened to African American slaves. The pain, the love, the struggle. I remember feeling all those emotions before. So was I really that different from them? Were the differences between us enough for me to justify my thinking of us as us and them as them? No. And the moment I realized this, my entire perspective about the era changed. This is the power of films. They tend to tell stories in such a way that no matter what, you end up feeling more connected and empathetic towards that person or group of people. And given that we are living in an era of films and movies, we should specifically go out of our way to watch films that challenge our viewpoints or discuss issues that we previously did not identify with. The second step of creating this culture is to choose one issue that you deeply resonate. Now, it could be anything from going to refugee centers to starting fundraisers for the local staff. In my case, it was helping children with disabilities. For a long time, I had no idea about the struggles that disabled children went through. This was because I had no friends or family who had a disability. But then I watched a show called Atypical and read a book called The Curious Incident of a Dog. This enlightened me as it showed me a whole world of struggles that disabled people go through. As soon as I hit this realization, I used the internet to reach out to a group called Tender Hearts, which is a well-known organization that helps people with disabilities. I worked at Tender Hearts for 8 to 10 hours every day for 2 weeks, helping children do some of the most basic things, such as sing, dance, play football, do exercise. Over my time there, I truly got to connect with some of the children. And I realized just how different our lives were, but also surprisingly, very similar. I mean, we all wanted the exact same things in life. The only difference was merely playing football with them was enough for them to be happy. They sang, they danced, they laughed, they enjoyed life like it is meant to be enjoyed. They didn't take anything too seriously, and they expressed their love of life that with every moment that passed. Coming in, I thought I was the one who was going to be helping these children. But as I left, I realized that they had helped me more than I could have ever helped them. They taught me what it is like to be free, happy, and most importantly, grateful for everything that I have. This is the power of technology when it is used as a tool. I might have never found tender hearts if it wasn't for Reddit. Technology taught me that all of us humans ultimately want the exact same things in life. To live, to be happy, to be loved. Just because someone is a little different from us or acts or behaves differently from us should not dictate who we extend our empathy to. Obviously, we can't stop judging people. It's our basic human nature. But what we can do is give people a second chance to prove our assumptions wrong. We can watch films, read books, and hang with people we don't identify with. Because the more time we spend with outsiders, the less prejudice we'll express. This is how we grow. The longer we hold on to these stereotypes, the longer we heed to the extreme polarization and double standards that exist within the society. So, coming back to our initial question, has empathy decreased within our society? Yes, we have more school shootings and terrorist attacks than ever before. But what we also have is technology. And it is in our hands to use technology in order to connect, in order to stay in touch, in order to share stories, in order to realize that all of us are ultimately just human. And as I said before, many times it will feel like there's simply too much going on for you to make a change. Sometimes you'll hear so many voices that you will feel powerless. But then again, if people like Greta Thunberg had given up, had she been too afraid to be the only 15-year-old standing outside her school protesting, with 6 million people from 150 countries joined her in a protest? The point is, we don't know. And quite frankly, I don't want to risk finding out. Do you? Sometimes we have to take a leap of faith and trust that the rest of humanity will follow. We have lived in a world long enough divided by what it is like to be you and me. It's about time we realize what it is like to be us. So this time, let's make it by humanity. Thank you.